The church was silent except for the sound of rain hitting the stained glass windows. My daughter's coffin rested at the front, surrounded by lilies she had loved so much in life. People sat in the pews with bowed heads, the air heavy with grief. I clutched the folded photograph of her as a child, smiling in pigtails, her arms wrapped around my neck. That picture was my anchor in the storm, but before the priest could finish his words, the heavy wooden door slammed open. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Heads turned, gasps filled the room, and I froze in disbelief. There he was, the man I hadn't seen in 15 years. The man who had walked out on us when my daughter was only a toddler, leaving me to raise her alone. He stood dripping from the rain, his suit rumpled, his eyes wild. And then, as if grief had never touched him, as if the coffin at the front were nothing more than a box of wood, he shouted with a venom that cut through the silence, "That money is mine." The room erupted. My hands trembled, my heart raced, and for a moment I thought I had misheard. Money? At my daughter's funeral? He stalked forward, ignoring the shocked faces, ignoring the whispers. His voice rose, shaking with fury. "She's gone, and I know what she left behind. $40 million. Don't play dumb. I am her father, and by law, I deserve it." Every eye turned to me, some with pity, some with disbelief, some waiting for me to collapse under the weight of his words. But I didn't. I straightened my back and faced him. "You have no right to be here," I said, my voice steady though my chest burned with rage. He sneered, leaning closer so only I could hear his next words. "I walked away once, but I won't walk away from this. That money belongs to me, and I'll tear you apart to get it." The audacity left the crowd stunned. Gasps, murmurs, people shifting uncomfortably in their seats. The priest tried to restore order, but the damage was done. The funeral, meant to honor my daughter's memory, had been hijacked by a man who had abandoned her. My mind spun back through years of silence, of nights spent rocking her to sleep alone, of birthdays with an empty chair at the table. He hadn't been there for her first day of school, or when she cried over heartbreak, or when she lay in the hospital bed fighting for her life. And now, he dared to claim he had a right to her legacy? I clenched my fists and stared at him, refusing to let my tears fall. The people watching needed to see strength, not weakness. My daughter had fought through life with dignity, and I would honor her the same way. "You abandoned her," I said louder this time, so everyone could hear. "You abandoned us. You think you can just return now and demand what she left me? You will never touch a single cent of it." His face darkened, his jaw tightening like a predator cornered. "We'll see about that," he hissed, his voice low and threatening. "Lawyers can be bought, courts can be swayed. You think you've won, but you've only just begun to lose." The crowd stirred again, some shaking their heads in disgust, others whispering frantically. A woman in the front row muttered, "How could he?" while an older man beside her whispered, "Greed always shows its face at funerals." I felt my knees weaken, but I held my ground. This was the moment everything changed. Grief had already threatened to drown me, but now anger gave me breath. My daughter's body lay before us, yet the real battle had only begun. And in that church, with every set of eyes watching, I made a silent vow. He would not win, not this time. But as he stormed out, slamming the doors behind him, I saw something flicker in his eyes. It wasn't just greed, it was knowledge. He knew details he should never have known. The exact amount, the inheritance, the accounts, which meant one horrifying truth settled over me like ice. Someone close to me had betrayed my daughter's trust. Someone had told him everything. And now, as I stood in the wreckage of the funeral, I realized this wasn't just about money. It was about betrayal, secrets, and a war I wasn't prepared for but could not avoid. The storm outside raged louder, and inside me, a storm of my own began to build. This was only the beginning. The night after the funeral, I sat in my daughter's empty room, clutching her blanket like it was the only thing keeping me alive. The faint scent of her perfume lingered in the air, sweet and haunting, and the silence pressed in on me. I could still hear his voice loud, vicious, demanding money at her funeral, and it ripped at me like claws. But as I stared at her photographs on the wall, my mind slipped backward. His face that stormed into the church was not new to me. It was a ghost I had lived with for years. The father who abandoned us. The man who once swore he loved us, but walked away when we needed him most. I closed my eyes, and the memories clawed their way back, dragging me into the past I had tried so hard to bury. It was a spring evening, 15 years ago. The sun was setting, painting the kitchen window in streaks of orange and red. I was making dinner spaghetti, her favorite, when he came home. His face was tight, his movements sharp, restless. "I can't do this anymore," he said, not even sitting down. At first, I thought he meant work. His job had been wearing him down, long hours and endless travel. I tried to smile, tried to soften the tension. "It's okay. Things will get better. We'll manage." He shook his head, eyes darting everywhere but at me. "No, I mean this. Us, the house, the responsibility. I never signed up for this life." My hands froze, the wooden spoon dripping sauce back into the pot. "You mean our daughter?" He flinched, as if the word stung. "She's your daughter," he said coldly. I didn't want this. I didn't want to be tied down. It was like the air left the room. I felt my chest tighten, the floor tilt beneath me. Our daughter was barely 2 years old. She had curls like him, the same dimples when she smiled. She loved climbing onto his lap, tugging his hair with tiny hands. And now, he spoke as if she were a burden, a mistake. I whispered, "She's a child. She's your child." But he had already turned toward the door, suitcase in hand. He had packed it quietly before I even realized. That betrayal, that cold calculation was worse than any shouted fight. He didn't kiss her goodbye. He didn't even look back. The door closed, and just like that, my world shattered. I remembered standing in that kitchen long after he left, staring at the clock ticking above the stove. The sauce burned, the spaghetti stuck together, but I didn't move. My daughter's cries from her crib finally jolted me. She was hungry. She needed me, and that night, I learned what survival truly meant. I fed her. I rocked her until her sobs quieted, and when she finally fell asleep, I sat on the floor, beside her crib, tears streaming silently down my face. I promised her, swore on everything I had left, that she would never feel abandoned again. That promise became the anchor of my life. Raising her alone was not easy. There were nights I worked 2 jobs, leaving her with neighbors who became like family. There were mornings I walked her to school with shoes that pinched my feet because I had spent the last of my paycheck buying her supplies. I remembered one bitter winter when the heat went out in our tiny apartment. I wrapped her in every blanket we owned, pulled her into my arms, and sang her lullabies to distract her from the cold. She smiled up at me with sleepy eyes, whispering, "We're warm, Mommy." She believed me, even when I was shivering too. Hard to sing. The pain, the exhaustion, the constant fear of failing her, it could have crushed me. But instead, it forged me into steel. Every sacrifice was worth it when I saw her succeed. Her first day of school, she ran to me with a paper crown on her head, shouting, "Mommy, I'm the queen today." Her first dance recital, her first debate competition, her college acceptance letter, I was there, cheering so loudly people turned their heads. Because no matter how empty my life had felt after he left, she filled it with light. But even as I tried to bury the memory of his betrayal, the scars never fully healed. There were nights when I woke in a panic, hearing the phantom sound of the door slamming shut. There were moments when she asked questions I could not answer. "Mommy, why doesn't Daddy visit me?" I would force a smile, stroke her hair, and say, "Because he doesn't know what he's missing." But inside, I bled. I wanted to shield her from the truth. But children are sharper than we give them credit for. She learned quickly that he was gone by choice, not by force. And that knowledge made her stronger too, though I knew it left invisible wounds. By the time she was a teenager, she no longer asked about him. She didn't need him. She had me, or so I thought. The flashback shifted, pulling me to a memory years later when my daughter was 22, and her career was already soaring. She had built a company from scratch, investing in tech when no one believed in her ideas. I watched in awe as she turned late nights of scribbling designs into millions of dollars. She would look at me, laughing. "See, Mom, you believed in me when no one else did. Now I'll take care of you." I never wanted her money. I wanted her happiness. But when she insisted on securing me in her will, naming me the sole beneficiary of everything she built, I realized how far we had come. And now I understood why he had stormed into the funeral, demanding what was never his. Someone had told him. Someone had fed him the details of her estate. As I sat in the quiet of her room, clutching her blanket, I felt a chill crawl down my spine. The betrayal wasn't just in the past. It was happening now. He had abandoned us once, but this time, he wasn't walking away. He had returned, and he was armed with knowledge he shouldn't have had. The question clawed at me. Who had betrayed us? Was it a lawyer? A friend? Someone close enough to know the exact numbers? The thought made my stomach twist. Trust had always been fragile for me after he left. But now, even the people who had stood by me during the funeral seemed like potential traitors. I closed my eyes, tears finally breaking free. My daughter deserved peace, and instead, her memory had been dragged into a battle of greed. But as grief threatened to swallow me whole, I remembered the promise I had made 15 years ago, beside her crib. She would never feel abandoned, even in death. I would keep that vow. I wiped my tears, my hands steadying. If he thought I would roll over, he had underestimated me. I had built my life on resilience, on surviving abandonment, on raising a child alone. I had fought too hard to let him take what belonged to her legacy, and if someone close to me had betrayed us, I would find out who. The past had returned to haunt me, but this time, I wasn't the broken woman in the kitchen with a wooden spoon in her hand. I was stronger, harder, ready for war. The storm that began at her funeral was only gaining force, and I would not be the one swept away. The morning after my sleepless night in her room, the doorbell rang. It wasn't a gentle chime. It was sharp, urgent, relentless. My heart jumped into my throat, every nerve in me screaming that it was him again, barging in to demand what was never his. But when I opened the door, it wasn't his face I saw. It was a man in a crisp gray suit, holding a leather briefcase, his expression unreadable. "Mrs. Andrews?" he asked formally. I nodded, my voice shaky. "Yes." He handed me a card. "David Callahan. I was your daughter's attorney. We need to talk." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The word attorney hit me like a stone. My daughter had kept so much private, insisting she would handle the business side of her life so I wouldn't worry. Now, the secrets of her empire were about to unfold in front of me. I led him inside, every step heavy with dread. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I had raised my daughter, where I had once counted pennies to pay rent, where I had bandaged scraped knees and celebrated birthdays with lopsided cakes. Now it was covered with legal documents and files stacked neatly from his briefcase. Mr. Callahan folded his hands. "I need to give you the details of your daughter's estate, but first, I need to ask, has anyone approached you yet?" The question sliced through me. I thought of him, her absent father, storming into the funeral, screaming that the money was his. I clenched my fists. "Yes," I said quietly. "He has." Mr. Callahan's face tightened. "Then we need to be very careful. There are legal steps he may attempt. You need to know exactly what you are facing." I braced myself. He opened a folder and slid a thick document toward me. "Your daughter's net worth at the time of her passing was $40 million. It includes her company shares, real estate holdings, and liquid assets. She left a will very clear and legally binding." My throat went dry. Even though I knew she had built something extraordinary, the sheer number felt overwhelming. $40 million. My daughter, the little girl I had rocked to sleep in a freezing apartment, had turned her dreams into a fortune. Tears burned my eyes, but before I could speak, he continued, "In her will, she named you as the sole heir. Everything she owned, every account, every property, it is all under your name now." My breath caught. "All of it?" "Yes," he confirmed. "She made it very clear. There are no secondary beneficiaries, no trusts, no charitable diversions. She wanted it to go directly to you." The weight of it pressed down on me. She had trusted me with everything she had worked for, and now that trust was under attack. Mr. Callahan leaned closer, lowering his voice. "This is where things become complicated. The man who appeared at the funeral, he is legally still her biological father. That gives him no claim to her estate unless explicitly included in the will, which he is not. However," the word hung heavy. "However, he can contest the will. He can argue undue influence. He can attempt to prove she was not of sound mind when drafting it. He can even claim that, as her parent, he is entitled to a portion of her wealth." My chest tightened. "But he left us. He abandoned us 15 years ago. Doesn't that matter?" Mr. Callahan's eyes darkened. "Morally, yes. Legally, it complicates things. Unless parental rights were terminated in court, he remains her father on paper. That gives him an entry point, a weapon to try to tear this apart." I felt the blood drain from my face. The room fell silent for a moment, the ticking of the wall clock pounding in my ears. Then I asked the question that had been gnawing at me since the funeral. How did he even know? How did he know about her wealth, about the will, about any of this. Mr. Callahan hesitated, flipping through his notes. That is troubling. Your daughter's will was private, sealed. Only I had a copy, and it was not to be revealed until after her passing. For him to know the details this quickly suggests someone leaked information. The words chilled me. A betrayal, not from the grave, but among the living. Someone close had told him. Who? I whispered, my voice breaking. I intend to find out, Mr. Callahan said firmly. But for now, we need to prepare for his next move. That move came sooner than either of us expected. While Mr. Callahan was still spreading out documents, my phone buzzed. A new email notification appeared. I almost ignored it, but the subject line made my blood run cold. Notice of legal action. Contest of will. My hands shook as I opened it. The words swam in front of my eyes, but the meaning was clear. He had already filed to contest the inheritance. He wasn't wasting a second. He's faster than I thought, Mr. Callahan muttered, scanning the email. This is aggressive. He's already secured counsel. My stomach twisted. What does this mean for me? It means, Mr. Callahan said, his voice low and steady, that you are about to step into a legal war. I thought the storm had ended with the funeral, but this was only the beginning. My mind flashed back to the moment he had walked out of our lives 15 years ago. Suitcase in hand, he had left me with nothing. No money, no support, no father for our child, and I had clawed my way up from that pit to raise her alone. And now he dared to return, screaming that everything she had built was his. Rage burned through me, sharp and steady. For years, I had been afraid of him, afraid of his abandonment, afraid of his shadow. But not anymore. If he wanted a war, he would get one. Mr. Callahan gathered the papers, his voice brisk. We'll prepare to defend the will. Your daughter was meticulous. She updated it last year, notarized, signed with witnesses. It will be difficult for him to prove otherwise. But there is something you should know. I looked at him sharply. What? She left behind a letter. It was sealed with the will. She wanted you to have it after her passing. He pulled a small envelope from his briefcase and slid it across the table. My breath caught. My hands trembled as I reached for it, the paper delicate beneath my fingers. Her handwriting was on the front. To Mom, it read. My eyes blurred with tears. I held it to my chest, too afraid to open it, too desperate to hear her voice again. Take your time, Mr. Callahan said softly, but I knew in my heart the contents of that letter could hold the key. Maybe it was her last words to me. Maybe it was a warning. Maybe it was the truth behind how he found out. Whatever it was about to change everything. I looked up at Mr. Callahan, my voice steadier than I felt. He thinks this money is his. He thinks he can erase 15 years of abandonment with legal papers. But he doesn't know who he's dealing with. I survived him once. I'll do it again. For the first time since my daughter's funeral, I felt the fire in me burn. This wasn't just about money. This was about her memory, her trust, her legacy, and I would fight with everything I had to protect it. The envelope lay on the kitchen table all night, its delicate paper catching the faint glow of the streetlight through my curtains. I couldn't bring myself to open it. Every time I reached for it, my hand trembled. It felt like if I broke the seal, I would admit she was truly gone, but dawn came regardless. With it, the sharp rap of fists against my front door jolted me upright. Not the polite knock of a neighbor, not the firm greeting of Mr. Callahan the attorney. This was angry, demanding. I froze. Then his voice thundered from outside. Open up. We need to talk. Now. My stomach clenched. He had come again. The father who abandoned us. The man who screamed at my daughter's funeral that the fortune she built was his. I wanted to ignore him, to sit in silence until he went away. But his pounding grew louder, rattling the glass. Pains in the door. My neighbors would soon notice. Reluctantly, I unlocked it, leaving the chain on as I opened it just enough to see his face. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw tight, his suit wrinkled as if he hadn't slept. Yet beneath his disheveled state burned a fire of determination. You're making this harder than it needs to be, he said, his voice low but filled with menace. We both know she would have wanted me to have a share. You can't cut me out like this. My grip tightened on the door. She made her will clear. You left us. You forfeited any right to her life, her success, and her money. He smirked, leaning closer. Legally, I'm still her father. That means I have rights. The courts will see it my way. Why drag this out? Give me my share, and I'll walk away. Peacefully. My heart pounded. The audacity of him, my share as if abandoning a child somehow earned him a payout years later. I didn't answer. His smirk widened, feeding on my silence. You don't want this to get ugly, he warned. You think you can handle a legal war? I've already filed. I'll drag this through every courtroom, every headline, until you're drained. Is that what you want? To see her name torn apart? In public? To see your daughter's legacy smeared just because you're too stubborn to compromise? His words were knives, sharp and deliberate. He wasn't just threatening me, he was threatening her memory. I shut the door on him without another word. The chain rattled as it clicked back into place, but his voice still carried through the wood. You'll regret this, he shouted. This money is mine, and you know it. The pounding eventually stopped, replaced by the roar of his car engine as he sped away. But the tremors in my hands remained. I stumbled back to the kitchen table, where the envelope still sat. For the first time, I didn't hesitate. I tore it open. Her handwriting flowed across the page, familiar loops and curves that made my chest ache. Mom, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. It means I couldn't tell you in person. I know you worry too much, and I didn't want to add to your burden. But I need you to know why I left everything to you. I know he may come back. He has a way of appearing when there's something to gain. I don't trust him. I never did. He left us when I needed him most. That's why everything goes to you. You were the one who stayed. You were the one who believed in me. If he tries to manipulate you, don't let him. Please, Mom, protect what we built. Protect our name. And never forget I chose you for a reason. Tears blurred my vision. My daughter had known. She had anticipated his return, his greed, his demands. She had trusted me to fight for her, even from beyond the grave. I pressed the letter to my chest, my resolve hardening. He wanted to play games with threats and manipulation? Then I would fight for her. Later that afternoon, Mr. Callahan returned. He saw my pale face, the opened letter, in my hands. Without a word, he sat across from me. He came again, I whispered. He threatened me. He said he'd drag this into the public eye until her name was ruined. And then I found this. I slid the letter toward him. He read it slowly, his jaw tightening. She was wise to anticipate this. This letter strengthens our position. It shows intent, her reasoning, her clarity of mind. It won't stop him from trying, but it will help us defend the will. I nodded, though my chest still felt like a storm. Mr. Callahan leaned forward. He will escalate. People like him always do. He may use intimidation, lies, even try to turn others against you. But we have the law on our side. Stay firm. I wanted to believe him. But that night, I learned just how far my daughter's father was willing to go. The phone rang after midnight. My heart leapt, thinking it was a wrong number. But when I answered, his voice hissed down the line. You think you're clever, hiding behind lawyers. But you're not the only one who can play this game. I know people. I know how to twist a story. You're going to hand over half, or I'll make sure the world sees you as the villain. A greedy mother stealing from her own daughter's memory. My hand tightened on the receiver. You abandoned her. You left us with nothing. You don't get to twist history. He laughed, the sound hollow and cruel. History is written by the survivors. And right now, that's me. Unless you pay me off quietly, I'll smear your name in every paper, every channel. Your daughter's company? I'll poison it with rumors until its value crumbles. You'll inherit ashes instead of millions. The line went dead. I sat in the dark, my chest heaving, the silence pressing heavy. His manipulation was no longer just about courts. He was playing dirtier than ever, threatening reputations, twisting truths. The next morning, I found proof of his threats. Online forums, social media whispers, anonymous posts questioning my right to inherit. Comments like, why did she get it all? Didn't the father deserve something? He was moving fast, planting seeds of doubt. My rage simmered. For years I had lived in his shadow, raising our daughter without help, without recognition. And now, when her legacy should have been honored, he was dragging it into the mud. I returned to Mr. Callahan's office with fire in my veins. We can't just defend, I said, slamming the letter onto his desk. We have to fight back. He's spreading lies. He's manipulating everyone. I want this stopped. Mr. Callahan studied me, then nodded slowly. Then it's time to go on the offensive. We'll gather evidence, proof of his abandonment, his lack of involvement. We'll use her letter, her company records, everything. If he wants a battle, we'll give him one. But the father wasn't done escalating. Days later, I returned home to find a plain envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typed message: last chance, settle privately, or watch everything crumble. There was no signature, but I didn't need one. I knew exactly whose threat it was. I gripped the note, my fury rising. He thought fear would break me. He thought threats would make me surrender. But he underestimated the power of a mother who had already lived through his abandonment once. I looked at my daughter's letter again, her words ringing in my heart. Protect what we built. Protect our name. And I swore to her, right then, I would not let him win. The courtroom air was thick with tension, the kind that clings to your skin and makes every breath feel heavy. Reporters lined the benches, pens scratching, cameras waiting for the perfect scandalous shot. He sat across from me, polished now, freshly shaved, his suit sharp, his smirk confident as though he had already won. My chest tightened. How could a man who had abandoned his daughter, who had left us with nothing, sit there so calmly, demanding her legacy as if it was his birthright? The judge's gavel struck. We begin. His lawyer rose first, voice smooth, dripping with practiced sympathy. Your Honor, my client was a father estranged not by choice but by circumstance. He loved his daughter, but was cruelly kept away. He deserves recognition, respect, and yes, a rightful share of what she left behind. The words sent shivers down my spine. Cruelly kept away? The audacity twisted my stomach. My attorney, Mr. Callahan, leaned in close, his whisper steady. Stay calm. We have what we need. And then, he stood. His voice was not soft, not pleading. It rang with steel. Your Honor, opposing counsel paints a picture of a father wronged. But today, we reveal the truth, a truth this man hoped would remain buried. He placed a thick folder on the table, sliding photographs across the polished wood. Records, documents, proof of a past not of absence by force, but by choice. Proof of abandonment, deception, and worse. The judge motioned him forward. The photographs were lifted, displayed for all to see. My stomach lurched as old images resurfaced, images I had forced myself to bury years ago. There he was, standing outside another woman's home. There he was, vacationing with her, arm draped proudly over her shoulders, while I worked 2 jobs to keep food on our daughter's plate. Dates stamped clearly across the corners, the very years he had claimed to be estranged by force. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. His smirk faltered, but Callahan wasn't finished. He pulled another stack from the folder. And here financial records, bank statements, transactions, all proving he built a new life while neglecting the daughter he now claims to love. For over a decade, he paid child support late or not at all. He lied, manipulated, and abandoned his family. This isn't the story of a father kept away. It's the story of a man who walked away willingly. The judge's eyes narrowed. The gallery gasped. I watched as the mask he wore, the calm, the arrogance began to crack. His jaw clenched, his eyes darted, searching for a defense. Callahan's voice rose, each word striking like a hammer. And it does not end there. Records show criminal charges for fraud, dismissed only on technicalities. Charges he never disclosed. Is this the man who should inherit the empire built by a daughter he abandoned? Is this the legacy she would want? Gasps turned into whispers, the room alive with scandal. Reporters scribbled furiously. The father's face reddened, his composure unraveling under the weight of truth. He slammed his hand on the table, rising to his feet. Lies, all lies. You can't prove, but the judge's gavel cut him down. Sit down. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time, his power shrank. His threats, his manipulation, all of it wavered against the mountain of evidence laid bare for the world to see. I sat taller, clutching my daughter's letter in my bag, her words echoing in my heart. Protect what we built. Protect our name. The truth had finally pierced through his facade. The man who stormed back into my life screaming for millions had just been stripped of his greatest weapon, his illusion. But as his eyes met mine, dark and blazing with fury, I realized something chilling. A cornered man does not give up. A cornered man becomes dangerous. The battle was far from over. The silence after the judge's gavel felt heavy, suffocating, as though the entire courtroom itself was holding its breath. He had been cornered, his arrogance cracked open in front of strangers and cameras. But the truth had only begun to unravel. Mr. Callahan stood again, his voice calm but cutting, each word designed to slice through the fragile web of lies my daughter's father had spun. Your Honor, he began, flipping open another folder. The photographs and bank records are only part of the story. The deeper we looked, the darker it became. What we found goes beyond abandonment. It speaks to a pattern of deception spanning years, across states, across lives. The words echoed. Across lives. The father shifted uneasily, his knuckles white as he gripped the table. He muttered something to his lawyer, but it was too late. Callahan held the room. Fraudulent businesses, shell accounts, a trail of money hidden under false names. He built empires on deception, leaving destruction behind. And when the walls closed in, he didn't stop. He simply moved on to another life, another family. Gasps broke out in the gallery. My hands trembled as I listened. I thought I knew the depth of his betrayal, but this multiple families, entire, double lives was beyond what I had imagined. Callahan continued, unflinching. He placed down marriage records, birth certificates, photographs of children I had never seen. 3 marriages, 3 women, all unaware of one another. Children scattered, promises broken, each abandoned when his lies caught up to him. This man wasn't robbed of fatherhood. He stole it from himself. Again and again, the sound in the courtroom swelled, whispers colliding like waves. Reporters scribbled, cameras clicked. The story had just transformed from inheritance dispute to scandal of the year. He shot up from his chair, his voice hoarse with fury. Stop this. You have no right to drag my private life. The judge's voice cut through like steel. Sit down or be removed. He obeyed, but barely. His chest heaved, his eyes wild, darting to me as though I were the architect of his downfall. But I hadn't uncovered these secrets. His past had caught him by its own teeth. I could feel my daughter's presence in that moment. The empire she built, the dignity she carried, the strength she inherited from the pain we endured together. It shielded me now. This wasn't just my fight, it was hers. Callahan's voice dropped lower, deliberate, deadly. So I ask this court, is this the man worthy of inheriting $40 million, built on the sweat and sacrifice of a daughter he abandoned? Or is he a fraud who believes family is something to exploit until it no longer serves him? The judge leaned back, her eyes sharp. She had seen enough to know, but I could sense that this wasn't the end. He wasn't done. Men like him never surrendered. They found new weapons. He turned his gaze on me then, a cold, venomous stare that pierced through the noise. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, more like a promise of war. And in that chilling moment, I understood he wasn't just fighting for money. He was fighting to destroy me. My hands tightened on my daughter's letter. In my bag, her words pulsed in my chest like a heartbeat. Protect what we built. Protect our name. I breathed deeply, steadying myself. The court had seen his lies. The world now knew who he was. But a man stripped of his mask is the most dangerous of all. And as the bailiff called for a recess, I realized with cold certainty, this battle was only moving into darker territory. More secrets lurked, ready to detonate. And when they did, the explosion would change everything. I had barely stepped into my house when the weight of the day finally crushed me. The courtroom had been a battlefield, and though I had stood tall, my body trembled as if the walls themselves were shaking with the echoes of his threats. His glare still burned in my mind, a silent vow that he wasn't finished. I dropped my bag onto the couch and pressed my hands against my face. That was when my fingers brushed against something sharp, tucked deep into the lining of the bag. It wasn't mine. Frowning, I pulled it out and froze. It was an envelope, my name written across the front in my daughter's unmistakable handwriting. The world tilted. My knees nearly gave way as I sank into the chair. My hands shook violently as I tore it open, terrified of what I might find yet desperate for her voice one more time. The first words made my heart stop. Mom, if you're reading this, it means he's back. I couldn't breathe. Tears blurred the page, but I forced myself to read every word. I knew he would come when I was gone. He always wanted what he didn't earn. I didn't want you to face him unprepared, so I made sure the empire we built could not be touched. The lawyers already have everything in place. The fortune, the businesses, the charities, they belong to us, not him. He cannot take it, no matter how loud he screams. And if he tries, this letter is your shield. A sob tore from my throat. She had known. She had seen the storm long before I did, and even in death, She was still protecting me, but there was more. I also uncovered things about him, Mom. Things I never told you because I wanted to spare you the pain. Hidden accounts, false identities. He is not just a deserter. He is a criminal. The lawyers have copies of everything. If he pushes, his past will destroy him before he can touch us. The words seared into me like fire. My daughter hadn't just built a legacy, she had built a fortress. And I was standing inside its walls. Then came the line that nearly broke me. You always protected me. Now it's my turn. I love you, and I will not let him win, even from the grave. The paper slipped from my hands, but her voice echoed in my chest. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt power surge through me. He thought I was vulnerable, an old woman drowning in grief. But my daughter had armed me with weapons he couldn't see coming. I rushed to the desk and opened the second envelope that had come with the will, the one I had ignored in my grief. Inside were contracts, sealed documents, ironclad protections written with precision, trusts locked away, clauses preventing transfer, evidence of fraud tied directly to his name. Every path he could take had already been closed. It wasn't just protection, it was a trap, and he was walking straight into it. For the first time, I smiled, not out of cruelty, but with the fierce relief of a mother who realized her daughter had not left her defenseless. But the smile faded as quickly as it came, because if my daughter knew this much, then so did he. And if he knew he couldn't win legally, then his next move would be something darker, something desperate. I gathered the documents and pressed the letter against my chest. The room felt colder now, the night heavier, as if danger lurked just beyond the window. And then I remembered the last line of the letter. Trust no one, Mom. He's more dangerous than you think. The knock at my door came like a gunshot. The courtroom was already buzzing when I stepped inside, clutching my daughter's letter like a lifeline. Reporters filled the back rows, their cameras poised. Lawyers shuffled papers, the air thick with anticipation. Everyone knew today was different. Today, the truth was going to break open. And then he entered. My daughter's father strode in as though the room belonged to him, arrogance dripping from every step. He didn't see me as a grieving mother, he saw me as an obstacle standing between him and millions. His eyes locked on mine and his smirk deepened, daring me to crumble. But I didn't. Not anymore. The judge called the session to order, and immediately his lawyer sprang to life, painting him as the abandoned hero of a tragic story. A man wronged by circumstance, robbed of his rightful inheritance, now simply asking for justice. The courtroom murmured in sympathy, but I remained silent, waiting, because I knew what was coming. When my lawyer stood, she carried the weight of my daughter's foresight. She handed the judge a sealed file, then turned to the court. Your Honor, opposing counsel speaks of justice. Let us talk about the truth. She opened the first document. This man did not abandon his family out of hardship. He left to pursue a second family. In fact, he has 3, each carefully hidden under different names. We have the marriage records, the birth certificates, and the financial accounts to prove it. Gasps ripped through the courtroom. His smirk faltered for the first time. Reporters scribbled furiously, flashes already sparking from the back row. But my lawyer wasn't finished. Furthermore, he presents himself as a man of integrity, yet here are bank records tying him to offshore accounts, forged signatures, and fraudulent withdrawals spanning over a decade. Money siphoned from businesses, debts buried under false identities, and transactions linked to known criminal entities. The room erupted. Even the judge leaned forward, brows furrowed. He shot up from his seat, shouting, lies, all lies. This is a setup. His voice cracked, desperation seeping through the cracks of his bravado. But my lawyer calmly laid down the final blow. She held up my daughter's letter, sealed and notarized long before her passing. This letter was written by the deceased, anticipating his return. She not only foresaw his greed but provided protections ensuring her fortune would remain untouched. And she warned us he would resort to manipulation, intimidation, and lies. She was right. The judge took the letter, reading in silence. The weight of my daughter's words filled the room, undeniable and unshakable. Then the gavel slammed. Order, order in this court. But the order was gone. Reporters surged, capturing every second of his unraveling. He clutched the table, face red, sweat dripping, his voice cracking as he tried to deny what the world was now seeing with their own eyes. You can't do this. To me, it's mine. All of it is mine, he screamed, spit flying as the bailiffs closed in, and in that moment, in front of strangers, lawyers, reporters, and the law itself, he was stripped bare. Not the powerful man he pretended to be, but a desperate fraud whose secrets had finally caught up with him. The humiliation was complete. The judge's voice thundered above the chaos. This case is dismissed. The inheritance belongs solely to the rightful heir's estate. Any further claim by this man will be considered fraud and subject to criminal investigation. His knees buckled. The bailiff seized his arms, dragging him from the courtroom as he kicked and shouted. But no one listened anymore. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. His empire of lies had collapsed in a single afternoon, and the world had witnessed his fall. I sat frozen, tears streaming silently, not from sorrow this time, but from the overwhelming power of my daughter's foresight. She had defeated him, even in death, but as the noise swelled around me, a chill threaded through my relief. Because humiliation was one thing, desperation was another, and a man with nothing left to lose can be the most dangerous of all. The gavel fell again, ending the session, but I knew in my bones this was not the end. This was only the beginning of a darker fight. The air outside the courtroom was sharp, buzzing with reporters, microphones, and questions hurled like stones. I pushed past them, clutching my daughter's letter as though it were armor. Behind me, he shouted from within the custody of bailiffs, his voice hoarse, his dignity shredded, yet I knew men like him. Humiliation only sharpened their hunger. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I received a phone call that chilled me. A close friend of my daughter's whispered through the line, "You need to know, there's something he didn't want you to find. It's about the inheritance. It's about who he's been working with." My hands trembled as I listened. The betrayal was deeper than I had ever imagined. Hidden in legal files my lawyer had just unlocked, we discovered correspondence between him and someone I trusted, someone close to me. The betrayal came from within my circle. It was my own brother, the man who had held me when I cried after my daughter's death, who had promised to protect her memory, had secretly colluded with her father. In exchange for a share of the inheritance, he had fed him information, guided his attacks, and even helped orchestrate the courtroom ambush. When the truth landed, it cut deeper than any courtroom revelation. My daughter's absent father was a vulture, but my brother, my blood, was a knife in the back. I confronted him the next day in his study. Papers littered his desk, his hands shaking as he tried to justify it. "You don't understand," he said, his voice breaking. "I've been drowning in debt. They promised me a way out. I never meant for it to go this far, but I wasn't listening. Not anymore. You sold her memory," I said, my voice cold. "You betrayed the only family you had left, and you thought I would forgive it." He reached for me, but I pulled away. For once, the years of being the quiet, grieving woman fell away. I stood straighter, taller, my daughter's strength coursing through me. This was the moment I finally understood what she had left me: not just wealth, not just protection, but power. My lawyer and I moved quickly. Within days, we froze every account my brother had touched. We exposed his dealings with her father, dragged every secret into daylight, and left both men stripped of their leverage. Reporters devoured the story. The man who abandoned us 15 years ago, and the uncle who betrayed his own blood. It was all over the news. Their schemes, their greed, their lies were not whispered in dark corners anymore. They were headlines, warnings, cautionary tales. But more than the public humiliation, I finally felt something else: control. For years, I had lived under the shadow of abandonment, grief, and betrayal. I had raised my daughter alone, buried her dreams with trembling hands, and now fought wolves for her memory. But standing there, sealing away their reach forever, I realized I was no longer fighting defensively. I was taking command. I signed documents that secured her fortune into a charitable foundation in her name, protecting it from every claw that reached for it. I stepped in front of cameras, no longer as a victim, but as a woman who had survived loss and come out unbroken. The betrayal had burned me, but it also carved me into someone unshakable. That night, as I locked the final folder into my safe, I whispered to her picture. "They tried to take everything from us, but in the end, they gave me something more: strength. And I promise you, they will never touch your legacy again." And for the first time since her passing, I felt peace settle into my bones. The house was quiet that evening, almost unnaturally so. For months, my life had been consumed with court hearings, betrayals, whispers in corridors, and the constant dread of what would be taken from me next. But that night, I noticed something different. The silence was not empty. It was calm. I lit a single candle by my daughter's picture and sat across from it. Her smile, frozen in that frame, seemed brighter than it had in years. For the first time, I could look at her face without collapsing under the weight of grief. The storm was over, but storms always leave debris, and mine came in the form of a sealed envelope that had arrived that afternoon. It was from the lawyer who had handled the final proceedings. I tore it open slowly, half expecting another twist, another hidden betrayal waiting to shatter me again. Instead, it was my daughter's final word to me, hidden within legal documents. A note she had written months before her death, given to the lawyer to be delivered only when everything was finished. "Mom," it began, her handwriting delicate but firm, "if you're reading this, it means the fights are behind you. I know you never wanted them, but I needed to make sure you were protected. Everything I did because I knew you'd put me first. Now it's my turn to put you first." My hands shook as I traced her words. She had known. She had seen the danger long before I did. She had planned, protected, and fought for me even when she was gone. And then came the twist that brought me to tears. She had arranged for part of the inheritance to be tied to something deeply personal. A retreat home by the coast, registered only in my name, untouched by courts, lawyers, or schemers. "Go there," she wrote. "Live there. Breathe there. It's not about money, Mom. It's about giving you a place where you can remember me without pain. Promise me you won't let sorrow build walls around your life." I pressed the letter to my chest, tears spilling freely. All this time, I had been fighting to preserve her memory, her fortune, her name. But she had been thinking of me, of my life after her. The final twist was not about money, not about inheritance battles. It was about love. The next morning, I stood at the edge of the ocean. The house she left me overlooked the waves, and I let the wind carry my daughter's laughter into my ears as though she were still with me. I understood then that the greatest victory was not humiliating her father, nor exposing my brother, nor winning the courtroom war. It was this reclaiming peace, reclaiming life, reclaiming myself. I knew there would be whispers, reporters still hungry for scraps of scandal, relatives still murmuring about betrayal and greed. But their voices no longer mattered. What mattered was that I stood on solid ground again, her memory unbroken, her legacy untouchable. I took a deep breath and spoke aloud to the horizon. "You tried to destroy us with greed, with betrayal, with lies, but you failed, because in the end, what remains is not your anger or your demands. What remains is her love, and her love is more powerful than all of you combined." I turned back toward the house, a place that was mine, a place she had chosen for me, and I smiled. This is where my story changes, not into one of grief, but one of strength, not into one of battles, but of rebuilding. And I want you to hear this because you might be sitting in your own storm right now, feeling like the world is stripping everything from you. Listen to me. You are stronger than you know. You can protect what matters. You can rise above betrayal, and you can choose peace when the fighting ends. I chose to stop being the victim. I chose to live. And now, so can you.